Today we're going to talk about photosynthesis. Now when you hear the term or the word photosynthesis, most people think of plants. Well, in actuality, as a microbiologist, we know that algae and cyanobacteria produce more oxygen on the Earth's biosphere. So we're going to first take photosynthesis, and we're going to break it down into two major pathways, or two sub-pathways, I should say. The first one is going to be light dependent. So we're going to take light in the presence of water. The cells are going to break down that water. It's going to make ATP, which is going to feed into the second process here we call the light independent pathway, also known as the Calvin cycle, the Calvin-Benson cycle. But anyways, that energy that we're going to make from the light dependent pathway up top will come in, feed in the light independent pathway in the bottom. As a byproduct, we're going to give off oxygen, and at the end, the goal here is to make carbohydrates. Okay, so just briefly, we need to start with energy. So where else will that energy come from? We said it's going to come from the sun. That sun energy is in the form of light energy. It's going to be captured, and it's going to be trapped inside this sugar molecule here. So it's going to be trapped into a carbohydrate molecule. So it's going to go from a light energy source to a chemical energy source. So where is that going to happen? Let's take this part up here, this light-dependent reaction where we have light and water molecules. So here we go on this slide. So we're going to need a membrane. This is a chloroplast stroma, and this is where the chlorophyll will be hidden. We're going to have these chlorophyll molecules. These are light-activated molecules. They're embedded inside of membranes. Here's the water molecule that's being brought into the light-dependent pathway, and here's the light. So this water molecule is going to be attracted to the chlorophyll. The light is going to activate, it's going to break the covalent bonds between the oxygens and the hydrogens, and ultimately it's going to give off these hydrogen protons. They're going to build up. Here's another hydrogen proton. And if you remember in chemistry that when ions of similar charge come close together, what they want to do is repel each other. So here's another hydrogen proton. He's going to come in, etc. Ultimately, if you remember the lecture on the electron transport chain, this looks very similar, and then the chemiosmosis, where hydrogen protons went through a little pore through the membrane, and here's our ATP synthase again, so the theory is very similar. Here is the ADP with the inorganic phosphate, and then ultimately is we're making ATP. So in this light-dependent pathway, again, the input is water. We're taking the light to activate that. We're breaking the bonds. We're making a lot of hydrogen protons. We're pumping them out. And the ATP synthase is generating ATP. Okay, so the ultimate goal, I told you about ATP, but I didn't mention the oxygen. The oxygen is going to be given off. We're going to go to the next slide. What I've just basically presented to you is this half right here, the light dependent. Input light, oxygen, water, oxygen is given off, and here's the ATP. This ATP is very much needed along with this ADPH. He's going to be the oxidized form. We're going to put him through the Calvin-Benson cycle shown right here. What else goes in the Calvin-Benson cycle? This carbon dioxide. So let's take this reaction right here. We're going to blow it up. There's a different slide, but what I like about this slide is it has all the carbon molecules as these spheres. So here's our carbon dioxide, and the energy is going to drive it. Here's our ATP that we need. We're going to put in some ATP molecules here, some more over here. That single carbon molecule, carbon dioxide, is going to interact with a molecule inside the cycle, which is the ribulose biphosphate, and it's going to go through this process. So for each carbon dioxide, if there's 6 that are required for glucose, it's going to go through 6 times. But ultimately, we're going to make a three carbon molecules, so we only need three carbon dioxides for this one pathway. These three carbon molecules are going to glue together. It'll be an enzyme that's going to make them make a 6 carbon molecule. Ultimately, we have our glucose. So it all starts with carbon dioxide, with the energy from the light-dependent pathway. The ultimate goal, whoops, let's get that back. There we go. The ultimate goal is to make that ATP. And so we've done that. I'm sorry, the ultimate goal is to make that glucose. There we go. Okay, so let's bring this back to microorganisms. As I mentioned in the opening slide, it's not just plants, but also algae and certain bacteria can undergo photosynthesis. And these bacteria are typically the cyanobacteria. Okay, so I have algae and bacteria here. We're going to focus first on algae. We're going to learn more about algae in the next lectures. They use, not only do they use chlorophyll, they're going to have other pigments that are also light activated. We call them accessory pigments. They're going to play a major role in the light-dependent pathway. That means that they're going to activate the molecule water and break it apart to rob it from its electrons. These accessory pigments are going to come in many, many colors. And so you're going to have green algae, red algae, brown algae, and so this is the basis of why these algae are in so many different colors. We're going to, these algae, because they are also eukaryotic cells and they have chloroplasts, they're going to put these accessory pigments inside these chloroplasts. And lastly, they're going to give off oxygen. That's going to be a byproduct. So one, they're going to need oxygen and they're going to need carbohydrates. So they are going to be the producers of organic matter. Bacteria, and we're going to talk a lot about cyanobacteria, they also contain chlorophyll. They will also produce oxygen. There'll be some other photosynthetic bacteria, but they will not have chlorophyll. They will have some other molecules called bacterial chlorophyll. They do not produce oxygen. So the ones that I really want to focus on is that of cyanobacteria. So algae and cyanobacteria. And so this is the end of our lecture on photosynthesis.